It all started when I was 23, and now, at 27, I can't seem to get this one particular trip out of my mind. Not a week goes by without me thinking about it. It was supposed to be a fun and carefree adventure. A trip to Las Vegas to celebrate our friend Andrew's 21st birthday. Andrew was a quiet, shy guy, not the type to go all out, and we knew he'd never really had certain experiences before. So, in typical young adult fashion, we had one goal for the trip: to get Andrew drunk and, well, help him lose his virginity. We booked ourselves into the Carriage House Hotel, a budget-friendly spot that fit our group of 7. To make things comfortable, we split into 2 rooms, and I ended up in the one with Andrew and 3 other guys. Our first order of business was food. We were all starving from the trip. After that, we hit the casinos because you can't go to Vegas and not gamble, right? Out of all 7 of us, only one managed to leave with more money than he started with. But that's Vegas for you. As the night went on, we bounced from bar to bar, each one blurring into the next as the drinks kept flowing. By the time we stumbled into a nightclub, the place was alive. Music blasting, lights flashing, people dancing wildly. 2 of our friends, John and Eddie, left with girls in tow, giving us a cheeky grin that clearly said, "We're about to get lucky." The rest of us focused our attention on Andrew, trying to push him to talk to someone. Anyone. But even with the alcohol loosening him up a bit, he was still too shy to approach a girl or even dance. We were getting desperate. We didn't want Andrew to leave Vegas without at least having some kind of adventure. So, in our drunken haze, we decided to take matters into our own hands. What started as innocent fun quickly took a different turn. We left the club on a mission to find Andrew a working girl. Now, looking back, I know how strange this sounds, but at the time, we were completely hammered and our judgment was far from sound. Eventually, we spotted a woman walking alone. We approached her like fools, slurring our words, asking if she would be interested in spending time with our friend Andrew, who, though clearly drunk, wasn't as far gone as the rest of us. The woman wasn't anything special. Honestly, even in my intoxicated state, I could see that. But at that point, all we cared about was making sure Andrew had a good time. I remember her voice being unusually deep, which gave me a strange feeling, but I brushed it off. She didn't say much, just looked Andrew up and down before grabbing his arm and leading him away. We could tell Andrew felt awkward, but we were too busy laughing at the whole situation to think much of it. Still, out of curiosity, we decided to follow them at a distance, just to see how things played out. They didn't talk, at least not that we could see. She was practically dragging him along the street. We trailed them for what felt like 15 minutes, maybe more, down a dark, quiet street. They finally entered what we assumed was an apartment building. We figured Andrew was about to have his fun, so we left and headed back to the club, feeling oddly proud of ourselves for setting him up. Around 2 in the morning, we returned to the hotel, but Andrew wasn't back yet. That's when I started to get a little uneasy. John and Eddie, who hadn't been with us when we met the girl, were surprised to hear what we'd done. Although we all assumed Andrew was just enjoying his night, something about it didn't sit right with me. It was so unlike him to do something like this. I tried texting and calling him, but got no response. My friends told me to relax, so I crashed, exhausted and still a little tipsy. A few hours later, I woke up to the sound of a phone ringing. Still half asleep, I reached for my phone, thinking it was my alarm, but then I realized it was Andrew calling. My heart dropped instantly. I told my friends, who were already awake, and I answered the phone. On the other end, I could hear Andrew's heavy breathing. He sounded panicked, like he was having some kind of attack. I put him on speaker so everyone could hear. His voice was barely a whisper, and we couldn't make out most of what he was saying, but there were a few clear words. "It was that woman. You guys need to come here now." We tried asking him where he was, what had happened, but he didn't respond. Then the line went silent. Panic set in. We were practically screaming into the phone, trying to reach him. That's when we heard it. A loud door slamming open, followed by Andrew's horrifying, blood-curdling scream. Then the call ended. We were all freaking out, scrambling to remember the route we'd taken to the building. I called the police, but in our drunken state, none of us could clearly recall the address. Thankfully, one of my friends thought he remembered the way. The police met us at the hotel, and we led them back to the building as best we could. After what felt like an eternity, we found the place. 2 officers went inside while we waited outside, hearts racing. Minutes dragged by like hours until one officer came out and asked us to come in to identify a body. I felt my whole world collapse around me. John and Jerry broke down in tears. They couldn't go in, so I did, following the officer into the building. It wasn't an apartment after all. It was some kind of dark, abandoned storage facility. What I saw next will haunt me for the rest of my life. It was a moment I'll never forget. The dead body slumped out of the open closet, staring blankly at the ceiling. Its face was emotionless, the mouth hanging open as if frozen in a final, lifeless gasp. The sight was horrifying, but one thing was clear right away. It wasn't Andrew. This person had blonde hair, while Andrew's hair was black. Relief washed over me for a moment, but it quickly gave way to confusion. Who was this boy and what had happened here? The officers had already swept the whole place and found nothing else of significance. There were no clues, no signs of Andrew. I had a gut feeling that Andrew might have been hiding in the closet. But when I checked, it was empty. No phone, no belongings, just a void where answers should have been. We tried to move on with our lives after that terrifying night, but about a month later, something strange happened. I received a phone call in the middle of the night. Groggy and half asleep, I picked up. The reception was terrible, and no one spoke on the other end. I was about to hang up when I heard a faint voice, familiar, yet distant, say, "Jesse." My heart nearly stopped. "Andrew," I shouted into the phone, but there was no response. Instead, I heard a loud door slam in the background, and then the line went dead. Panic set in as I tried calling him back, but he didn't answer. I must have called 5 times before deciding to call the police. They traced the call, but it wasn't coming from Nevada. It was coming from New Jersey, from our very own town. To my shock, the location was just a few blocks away. I couldn't wait for the police to get there. I had to see for myself, so I jumped in my car, heart pounding, and drove the 5 minutes to the address. The house was old and abandoned, sitting on a corner, dark and lifeless. I crept up to the front door, pressing my ear against it to listen. Silence. I snuck around the back and found a window that was cracked open. From inside, I could hear faint snapping and creaking noises coming from upstairs. Someone was moving around. I climbed in through the window, my nerves on edge, barely breathing. As soon as I stepped into the hallway, I froze. There, at the far end, was a figure. Someone standing still, facing me. I couldn't see their face, just their long black hair cascading down past their shoulders, and pale legs exposed beneath a nightgown. It was a woman. Every muscle in my body tensed, half expecting her to charge at me like something out of a horror movie. But instead, she turned and ran in the opposite direction. I heard a door slam shut, followed by heavy footsteps stomping downstairs, then shouting. There were 2 voices, a man and a woman, arguing, their yells echoing through the empty house. Then, I heard heavier footsteps coming back up the stairs. That was my cue to leave. I bolted out of the house, diving into a nearby bush just as someone stepped onto the front porch. My heart was racing, but before anything else could happen, I heard the sound of sirens. A police car pulled up to the curb, its lights flashing. I heard the man on the porch mutter something before slamming the door behind him. The police rushed into the house, and within minutes, they had the guy in cuffs. I cautiously approached one of the officers and told him there was a woman in the house, but they never found her. One of the bedroom windows had been left wide open, suggesting she had escaped. Andrew, however, was found upstairs, locked in a closet. He was in terrible shape, malnourished, filthy, his hair long and matted, and the stench coming off him was unbearable. The police ran a background check on the man, but nothing made sense. He wasn't married, and there was no record of who the woman might have been. The man claimed he had only known her for a day. Everything was strange and confusing, and it still is. When Andrew finally spoke to me about what happened, his story was chilling. He admitted that he had been beaten, raped, and barely fed during his time in captivity. The woman who had led him away that night was only there to collect payment from what Andrew described as the operators. They had forced him to give up his hometown and the addresses of all of us who had been with him in Vegas, which explained why they ended up in our town. But their true motives? That part remains a mystery. Were they planning to kill us? Enslave us? We may never know. Andrew confided in me about the horrors he endured, but he hasn't told anyone else from our group. When friends ask what happened, I simply tell them I don't know. It's not my story to tell, and the details are too horrific to relive. Things seemed to settle down after that, or so I thought. A few days later, I received a text message from a random number late at night. The message just said, "You." I tried replying, but I was blocked. The same thing happened again a week later, and then again a month after that. I began to suspect it had something to do with the incident, but I had no idea how far this would go. One night, I woke up to an eerie brightness in my room. It wasn't sunlight. It was coming from outside, from the backyard. The porch light was on, casting shadows through the closed blinds. I could see movement. Someone was out there. My heart raced as I quietly lifted the blinds, just enough to peek outside. And there, standing by the window, was a figure staring directly at me. It was as if they had been waiting for me to look. Before I could grab my phone to take a picture, they were gone. I have a strong feeling it was the same woman I saw in that house. That was the last time I saw or heard from anyone connected to this nightmare. Nothing about the situation has made sense, even with Andrew's explanation. I can't shake the feeling that this isn't over, that these people, or whatever they are, could come back. I don't know what they want, but next time, I'll be ready, whether it's calling the police or facing them myself.